I think in the beginning, when my daughter was very little and we were just getting the diagnosis, my whole family was behind me, although they're in California and in Kansas, so we're all kind of spread across the country, no family here. My mom would fly out and be with me through major hospitalizations. She got it in the beginning, but as Bridget gets older and, behavior and other issues have arisen aside from just the seizures, they don't get it so much anymore. My sister always compares her children, her girls, to mine, and tells me that, she's had enough problems with her kids that it's not just about Bridget, it's about, all the other kids, or this is normal, or, and they really don't get it anymore. They think they're being helpful when they're not. And it's one of those things where I think I've had to stop talking about it with friends as well, because our friends' kids are all around the same age. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes they'll say, you know what, that really is a teenage behavior. That really is okay. Yeah. And that really could be a phase. So try to look at it from our perspective. And then there are other times when you just know in your heart that this is not a normal pattern for a child. And you just know you have to take a step back, and there's really not a community. There's not a lot of support around that, unless we live close to other Dravet families whom we can say, oh God, and they'll say, yeah, I know,
I probably don't deal with it in the healthiest way, but after years of trying to, have these people in my family understand, it's just easier to avoid, avoid the discussion.
Yeah.
Again, it's probably not the right way, but
it's like, oh wow, we were invited for such and such. Should we even go? Because we know, we might, run into a certain circumstance or something like that. So we almost try to avoid the circumstance. So.
Yeah, and I think, people, everything you're saying, I think, is probably been felt by other parents too. And I know it can be so hard to say those things out loud, but I think you figure out what you need to do to cope and to support your family and to get through. So it's so helpful and important, I think, to share these things, even though I know it's difficult.
And even when you're about on, whether on vacation, a lot of kids, they'll come up and even ask what's wrong with her. You don't want to even really sit there and try to explain to them what's wrong, but you try to give the best, shortest answer, and then you go on about your way.
Yeah, how do you navigate those situations with other kids or people who might ask a question, well-meaning or not?
With us, I think we get a little bit more than your average, because a lot of people, I think, tend, when they see somebody with special needs, or they try to avoid. We have a golden retriever service dog, so that automatically pulls kids in, which is what it's really supposed to do at the same time, because you want your child to interact with other kids and to get used to know that. So we spend, can I pet your dog? So we spend a lot of time trying to explain to them what's wrong. And the kids are, they have no
filter.
They'll ask whatever they want to ask. The adult will be like, no, don't ask that. And we're like, no, it's okay. We'll try to explain.
Right.
But that's what the dog is also there for, because we don't want our child to be ostracated. We want her to try to be in the conversation too. So.
Yeah. I usually try to explain to kids that he's just like them, but just a little unique. And his uniqueness just has to happen to be, seizures. So I usually explain to them kind of what seizures are and how serious they are, and what to do if they see him have one and an adult isn't around. So I just try to educate them a little bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I did that with the school, because I thought it was important that if she had a seizure at school, that the kids wouldn't be afraid of her. So her first school, K through 4, I think, they allowed the Epilepsy Foundation actually to come in, and they had a children's training course. So it really got down to a child's level, like this is what happens when a kid has a seizure, don't be afraid, go get help. And she ended up having a seizure like her last year in that school, and the kids were wonderful.
Wow.
And they all wanted to FaceTime with her in the hospital to see how she was doing because she had to be back in the hospital. That was awesome. Moving forward from that school, though, that started to wane. People like, oh, we can't do that. We can't subject other children to this. They'll be scared. They'll be this. They'll be that. And I'm like, well, so what happens when it's an emergency and they need to help her?
But I do grieve about what could have been, what I thought would have been, having a daughter.
It's hard for that too.
Yes.
Like now, Amanda's supposed to be a senior, and all the senior
so
things
you got
are going
all
on.
the senior things.
And I went through it once with my older daughter, and it wasn't as hard as it is now because my older daughter never was with her peers. Amanda was. So I'm seeing all the girls get their license. The proms are going to happen. You know, it's hard. It's going to be a tough year for me.
You don't even want to do that with a neurotypical kid, right? That's what all the doctors say. Don't compare your child to other children, but we do. And it's so hard to compare our children to neurotypical children because you can't. But it is hard. It's hard to see. It's hard for me to see pictures of a group of friends out and I'm not there. Yeah. And it's like, and then you start wondering, like, did I not get invited because, you know, it's like that Mean Girls Club, right?
Yeah.
Like, did I not get invited because they didn't want to deal with Lena? Did they not get invited because they didn't I mean, it could be something simple, like they didn't think that I could.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just that thing. Or you see, like, the birthday parties and my kid wasn't invited. And, you know, so it's hard. And those bring up, like, grievances, you know?
Yeah, the only other side of grief is, which I think we touched on earlier, was just like the grief of like mourning the loss of the child you thought you had when you had a baby, and like as they get older, what does that become? What kind of life will they have in the future?
And it's your own life too.
Right.
Like you thought that your kids would
Well,
one
that's
day
the thing.
grow up
Changes
and
our life.
leave,
Yes.
and now you realize that you will always have a child with you.
Right.
We're
Always.
starting to see all our friends turn
Yeah.
into empty nesters, and they're like, "Oh, you guys
they're
want to go
all
cruise
all of our
with
friends, they're all
us?
talking about the
Let's
next
go on a
chapter.
trip. Let's do.
They
What
have
are we
kids
going to
going,
do?"
you know, kids graduating or going off to college, and what are they going to? Where are they going to live when their second child graduates? And
That's hard.
yeah,
The three of us.
Exactly.
It's going to be.
It will be, and frankly, I had a very honest conversation with my son recently, my oldest, because he said, "Well, what happens if you and Dad die?"
we had the same
And I was
conversation.
like, "Oh crap! Like, let's start this."
Yeah.
And then we started talking about like assisted living homes, or how do you leave that child that has such needs with their own sibling, or even like, I don't know if you folks have prepared wills, but I have nobody that I know that would be able to care for my son. So you think about that too. Like, well, if what happens to us prematurely, where would he go?
Right.
Well, who would care for him? Who would you want to even put that life on their shoulders? Because I wouldn't want anybody to live this life. But then what do you do then? So there's that whole part of it too.
We are all here for you. Please reach out. We are, I think all of us would be more than happy to lend you an ear, to cry on our shoulders, because we've all been there and we've all needed others'
Yeah, there is
shoulders.
quite a tight community now,
Yes.
especially Facebook-wise and everything
Yep.
like that. You're not alone. You can talk to people. So.
Yeah, and just reach out because you never know who's right next door. You know, there's people maybe in the town next to you. You just never know. So definitely reach out.